For decades, martial arts schools have taught that a simple wrist lock can instantly control a violent attacker. It's a foundational technique promising leverage over strength, a way to de-escalate a confrontation without causing permanent harm. But there's just one problem. The human body may not work that way under the extreme duress of real combat stress. When adrenaline floods the bloodstream, pain tolerance skyrockets and perception of pain can be completely negated. When a determined attacker is charging forward with hundreds of pounds of momentum, does a small joint manipulation really have the power to stop them? Or does the raw force of physics simply overwhelm the technique? The answer isn't just about pain, it's about structural integrity. Today we're putting one of Hapkido's most iconic techniques on trial, using motion capture for biomechanics, force plates for torque analysis, and heart rate monitors for stress physiology. We're going to find out whether wrist locks are legitimate fight-ending tools or whether they're one of martial arts' most misunderstood techniques. We'll measure the exact forces required to apply a lock and compare them to the forces an adrenalized attacker can generate. The results may upset traditionalists because by the end of this video, we'll reveal the exact conditions where wrist locks completely fail and the surprising situations where they become devastatingly effective. This isn't about opinion, it's about data. Stay until the end for the final verdict. Before we continue, please like and share to reach more martial arts enthusiasts. In dojos worldwide, instructors teach calm wrist control, precise, effortless. The promise is leverage. Small circles turn power against itself. Applied correctly, it pinches nerves and collapses posture, at least in class. Hip rotation, angles, and timing do the heavy lifting, not strength. In policing drills, it guides a compliant subject with minimal force. But under chaos, does that promise survive the cage or street? If wrist locks are so effective, why aren't they commonly seen ending fights in MMA, wrestling, or combat sports? Introducing the controversy. The wrist isn't a single hinge, it's a complex of carpal bones linking the radius and ulna. Flexion, extension, and ulnar radial deviation share load across two joints, which is why angle and direction matter more than brute force. In class, we point to a spot on the hand. In reality, the effective axis migrates through the carpal row as the wrist moves. If your lock misses that moving axis, torque delivery drops dramatically. Typical ranges: flexion roughly 70 to 90 degrees, extension about 60 to 75. Near end range, small angle changes create big leverage increases, the sweet spot practitioners try to capture. Ligaments and the joint capsule resist twist. Under load, tissues distribute force before pain registers. That's why pain is a signal, not a switch. You still need structure and angle to finish. Torque equals force times lever arm. Wrist locks work by lengthening the moment arm with pronation, supination, and hand rotation. Sensors show that alignment can double torque without adding effort. A small lever can move a big mass only if the base is fixed. Pin the elbow or shoulder first, then the wrist becomes easy to steer. Core question: joint torque versus whole body momentum. Tau equals F times R. Improve R with angle and control appears. Same lock, different alignment, opposite results. Leverage peaks when the elbow is pinned and the palm is turned. Poor angles shrink the lever arm. Your control collapses fast. Wrist locks are not magic, they are mechanical systems governed by physics. Fight or flight response. Adrenaline and cortisol release. When adrenaline floods the bloodstream, pain tolerance skyrockets. Reduce pain perception during violent encounters. Real-world examples of people continuing despite severe injuries. A wrist lock often relies on discomfort. An initiative-taking attacker may not care. If your technique depends entirely on pain, it may already be failing when the fight becomes real. Here we witness the raw collision between physics and technique. An attacker generates maximum forward momentum sprinting straight into a defender attempting a standing wrist lock. Beneath them, force plates are calibrated to record every ounce of impact, giving us a precise, data-driven look at this high-stakes confrontation. As the attacker moves, we annotate the key variables: mass, velocity, and the ground reaction forces. This is the fundamental recipe for momentum, an object's mass in motion. The more of each, the greater the force the defender must overcome. With every explosive step, the force readings spike dramatically. This isn't just running, it's a calculated accumulation of energy, building with each stride, all directed at a single point of failure, the defender's wrist. The ground reaction forces visualized here are critical. The attacker pushes down and back into the mat, and the mat in turn pushes them forward with equal and opposite force. Those spikes translate directly into propulsive forward drive. Consequently, the attacker's kinetic energy climbs exponentially with their speed. This stored energy must be dissipated upon impact, and the defender is asking a small, complex joint to absorb it all. So, can a small wrist joint designed for fine motor skills realistically halt the forward momentum of an entire human body? This is the critical test. We run 3 distinct trials: low, moderate, and high momentum. The technique remains the same, only the attacker's velocity changes. The results are telling. Notice that success only occurs when the defender first disrupts the attacker's balance, redirecting their force. When the defender's structure is compromised, momentum simply wins. The 3 biggest failure points. Failure number 1, chasing the hand. The hand moves faster than the body. Difficult acquisition under stress. Failure number 2, ignoring body position, locking the wrist without controlling posture. Opponent remains mobile. Failure number 3, relying on pain. Pain compliance disappears under aggression. Many practitioners aren't failing because their wrist lock is wrong. They're failing because they're trying to use a control technique as a stopping technique. There are surprising conditions where wrist locks become highly effective. First, when an opponent's balance has already been compromised, a wrist lock can finish the job. If posture is broken, leverage multiplies and the wrist becomes vulnerable. A distracted opponent loses structural awareness, creating fleeting openings to seize the wrist. Multiple control points create a stable chain that lets a wrist lock finish the sequence. In restraint scenarios, wrist manipulation supports escort holds and controlled compliance. During scrambles, transitions like a Kimura to wrist capture exploit brief structural openings. Elite practitioners rarely attack the wrist alone. They disrupt balance, break structure and base, then attack the wrist. That sequencing changes everything. What the data suggests, wrist locks are not fight-ending superpowers, not reliable against charging attackers, not ideal as first contact techniques, but they are excellent control tools, effective after posture disruption, useful for restraint and transitions, powerful when integrated into a larger system. The science doesn't actually destroy Hapkido, it reveals something far more important. The problem isn't that wrist locks don't work. The problem is that for generations, many martial artists were taught the wrong expectations. The myth of a single perfect technique that could neutralize any threat, regardless of context. This investigation was never about debunking a style. It was about recalibrating our understanding of what's truly possible. Physics shows us that a wrist lock cannot magically overcome the raw momentum of a committed attack, nor can it single-handedly negate the effects of aggression and adrenaline. But our analysis also confirms a crucial biomechanical truth. When an opponent's balance is compromised, their posture is broken, and precise leverage is applied, the complex structure of the carpal bones and radioulnar joint becomes one of the body's most vulnerable points. It's a cascade of failure waiting for the right trigger. In other words, the wrist lock is neither a fraud nor a miracle. It is a tool. More specifically, it's a precision instrument, not a blunt object. It's the scalpel in a surgeon's hand, not a sledgehammer. Its effectiveness depends entirely on creating the perfect moment for its application, often as the conclusion to a series of other actions like off-balancing or creating a distraction. The real lesson is bigger than Hapkido, and it's bigger than wrist locks. Every martial art contains techniques that work brilliantly under the right conditions and fail catastrophically under the wrong ones. The fighters who understand this distinction, the ones who pressure test their skills against resisting opponents, aren't practicing a fantasy. They are engaging with the complex, messy, and undeniable principles of reality. So now the question is yours. Have wrist locks been unfairly criticized, or have martial artists been overselling them for decades? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this biomechanical breakdown, hit the like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to see it. And be sure to join us next time as we apply this same scientific lens to the mechanics of the elbow lever. Until then, keep questioning, keep testing, and keep following the science.